HOD at MS Ramaya Medical College, Mangaluru, to deliver his talk on Med Mishaps to Zero Gaps, the latest in safe drug practices.
Good morning, everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers of ISACON for providing me an opportunity to be part of this scientific feast. I bring greetings from MS Ramaya Medical College, Bangalore. Medication errors are very, very common, and in any healthcare setup, one of the most important things that we do for our patients is administer medications. And whenever medications are administered to any patient, there are 5 rights that are recognized. The medication is given to the right patient, whether the right drug or the right medication is given, whether that medication is given in the right dose, it's given at the right time, and by the correct route, right route. To this, presently, they also had 3 more rights. It is correctly documented, and it is also given for the right reason, and you are also getting the right response. So, whenever there is any breach in any of these 5 or 8 rights, you can say that there is a medication error. What is the extent of this problem in the healthcare setting? The problem of getting data is there are very, very few studies available, and most of these data are estimates rather than pure data. The Institute of Medicine report, which is from the US, says medication error causes harm in about 1.5 million people every year, and it is the top 10 reason for causing death and disability. Along with diseases, if you take medication error as a disease, it's among the top 10. It also results in additional healthcare costs to the tune of nearly $50 billion. And this is data from US. Globally, if you take, the medication errors has been reported widely. Few studies reporting as low as 5% to as high as 41%. This depends on the type, how you are getting data, whether you are getting data through incident reporting. If it is through incident reporting, usually the incidents will be low because only the severe incidents get reported. The minor ones get missed. And if the data is through observational studies, the incidence goes up. And it is estimated that 1 in every 130 patients, outpatients, it causes medication error, leads to death. And in inpatients, nearly 1 in 850 patients, the medication error is the cause of death. And the incidence keeps going up if multiple medications are administered. If more than 5 medications are administered, the medication error goes up. So also the medication error goes up at extremes of age. It's very common in pediatrics and very common also in elderly. And how do you define a medication error? The problem is, when you go through literature, there are many definitions available. To put it very simply, medications error is a failure of treatment process that either leads to patient harm or a failure of treatment process that has a potential to cause harm. Both you can take it as medication error. So what is the extent of the problem in our specialty of anesthesia? Because as you know, anesthesia as a specialty is very, very medication driven. We administer so many medicines continuously to anesthetize a patient. So anesthesia being a medication driven specialty, the problem of medication error is very, very real. And again, as per some estimates, there is a medication error in 1 in every 130 anesthetic medications that are administered. Again, as I previously told, the incidence varies with the type of data collection method. If it is data collection is through incident reporting, it will be low. If it is through a passive observation by an independent observer, the incidence seems to be high. The reported, one study reports an incidence as high as 0.96. That means almost every anesthetic, there is one medication error. So it's quite high, and we should be taking precautions for that. And in the perioperative period, both pre-op, intra-op, and post-op, if you take, it might be as high as 11 to 12%. And why is it common in anesthesia is, as I pointed out, medication administration is very central to our specialty. And also, the medications that we administer are very, very potent. They have a very narrow therapeutic index. They are capable of causing wide physiological disturbances, and they have the potential to kill a patient. And it's also true that as anesthetists, we work in very, very complex environments. As one of our previous speaker was telling, you should never fly solo. But as anesthetists, we end up always, most often, flying solo. And we also work in a very, very distracting environment. For example, there is already somebody disturbing you about a third case on your list when you are starting your first case. You want the investigations and the reports of your next cases to be available when you are starting your first case. Or the surgeon is calling you up for his third case as to when he is going to get his case at what time. So you are working in a very distracting environment, and at the same time, you don't have support of your colleagues. For example, a nurse administering medication in a ward can check with her colleague. Whereas when you are working alone or flying solo, you don't have that advantage available. And also, now electronic medical decision systems being available in the ward, which is not available for an anesthetist in the theater. So more often than not, when you are administering medications in anesthesia, you are depending on situational awareness, you are depending on mental focus, and you are depending on vigilance. And all these are things which are influenced by human factors, and over a period of time, when you are fatigued, and all these things can get affected. Your situational awareness can get affected, your mental focus can come down, and if a vigilance can come down. So as the day progresses, or as your anesthetic progresses, the incidence of errors also go up. There are various methods of classifying the medication errors. Due to lack of time, I will not go through everything. There are various ways. These are important for purposes of study. Broadly, what are the sources of error in anesthesia? Most often, this is because of look-alike drugs. Your hospital has procured drugs whose packaging looks alike. Or there are sound-alike drugs. Or medications are stored in locations where it is confusing. Or your pharmacy or the hospital is purchasing the same medication in different concentrations. Or there is a mistake in the intended route of administration. These are the common sources of error that can happen during anesthesia. There are various guidelines as well as regulatory authorities who have given guidelines to be followed. Many of these are general and many of these are guidelines. They are not mandatory requirements to be followed. But however, when there are regulatory requirements are very, very few. And when you go through these guidelines, most of these guidelines are very, very extensive. And what I have done is to put all these guidelines, if you take the recommendations of all these guidelines, they fall into broadly these 5 categories as to how you purchase medications or how your pharmacy sources their medications, how the medications are stored in the hospital, how they are labeled and handled, and there are certain general administrative principles to be followed during medication administration, and there are individual or unique considerations for practitioners that you should be giving. And among these 5, a lot of emphasis is laid on labeling and handling of medication, because it is thought that if you take care of this labeling and handling, a good number or a good chunk of medication errors can be prevented and avoided. So labeling and handling is something a lot of emphasis is given. Coming to the purchase of anesthesia drugs, you should have a purchasing for safety policy. What does this mean? This means that make sure that if your hospital purchases drugs, not because it is cheap, because it is safe for the patient. For example, if your pharmacy is buying 2 look-alike drugs with the same packaging, try to advise them to discourage them from buying from the manufacturers who have a look-alike packaging. Also, when a single drug is manufactured from more than one manufacturer, prefer a manufacturer who has clarity in labeling and who follows the international standards. And also, whenever there is any change in packaging or labeling of drugs, widely disseminate among people who use those drugs, and withdraw all the previous stock that is available. Don't, at any given point of time, avoid both the drugs from both the manufacturer being available at the same time in the same location. And also try to purchase in concentrations where it can be directly used, where to minimize dilution as much as possible. And always give consideration for pre-filled and pre-labeled syringes. Many a times, pre-filled and pre-labeled syringes are far more expensive than buying in vials or ampoules. But at least for certain important drugs, it would be ideal to buy them in pre-filled or pre-labeled syringes. And also always purchase from suppliers or manufacturers who practice best practice guidelines for their packaging and labeling. And also standardize the concentration of a drug that is supplied to the operation theatre. For example, if propofol is available in both 1% and 2%, make sure that in your hospital you have either 1% propofol or 2% propofol and never both. And also standardize the size of the ampoules or vials that are supplied to theatre. For example, again propofol, it's also available as a 10 ml vial, 20 ml vial, as a 50 ml vial. So standardize the size of the vial that you buy, either buy 10, 20 or 50. Don't have supply of all the sizes of the vials. Then coming to how do you store these drugs. Many of these drugs are kept locked, but at the same time, ensure that the drugs are available when they are required in critical situations and also in enough numbers. Coming to the cart inventory also can be standardized across locations. This is one standard cart inventory which the pharmacy can provide. Always prefer single-use drugs. Multi-dose vials you discard at the end of the procedure. No concentrated drugs to be available on the cart until and unless it is required. If it is required, mark them with an alert label. Coming to labeling, which is very important. As soon as you load a drug, you ensure that the drug is labeled. And also dilution, you ensure that you follow local protocols. Your hospital should have a protocol in what dilutions each drug should be there. And always encourage 2% checking. And when you label syringes, you write their generic name, concentration, date of preparation, both for syringes as well as infusions. And whenever you label, you ensure that the label have a very good contrast. Means black text on white or blue on white or white text on blue. And always advisable to have color coding. Now color coding stickers are also available. And material used should be such that it prevents no smudging or blurring when you write. And if possible, use tall man lettering. That is, to prevent sound-alike drugs, you can use capital letters within the drug name. This is what is called as tall man lettering. If barcoding is available, it is ideal. And these are the 6 salient steps for syringe labeling. First, select a drug, prepare for labeling, check and drop. 2 more minutes, please. And label as soon as you draw. Do a two-handed check of whether the same thing has been labeled, and at the end, you retain the ampoule retain the drug content till you finish the case. And now is something is available for the syringes itself. There are lower lock syringes, N-fit syringes, and NR-fit syringes. Lower lock syringes only for IV injection, N-fit only for enteral feed, and NR-fit is only for your regional anesthesia and epidurals. And also you can standardize trays, something called as a rainbow tray, which is again color coded, and specific drugs are kept only in that part of the tray. Or you can have an anesthesia medication template, and within the anesthesia stay station, you ensure that the drugs or loaded syringes are kept at specified locations, and also follow certain general administrative principles. First, identify the patient clearly and explicitly, and also ensure what is the intended route of medication. Drugs should be drawn up and placed in appropriate receptacle, and also don't drop drug which is not required during that phase. Don't drop a reversal agent very early in your case and keep it on the table, because that is not required at that phase of your case. And also, if possible, do a timeout. And you should also give considerations to individual practitioners who can have reduced visual acuity or color vision deficiencies, and other deficiencies, minor deficiencies that the practitioners can have. To end, acknowledge that every practitioner, however senior, is prone to a medication error. Always prevent a culture of blaming, and whenever you investigate a medication error, rather than investigating it as a individual error, investigate it in a wider context of system responsibilities. And always try to design processes where doing right is easier and doing wrong is difficult. And medication handling should become one of the core competencies of training for anesthesia trainees. And these are the principles that you should follow. Load one medication at a time, avoid distractions, check twice, don't label until the drug, don't drop until it is needed. Relaxant and reversal, never keep it in the same place. For muzzle relaxant, now red barrel syringes are available. You can use those. And to end, I would like to say, to err is human, to cover up is unforgivable, and to fail to learn from our mistakes is inexcusable. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those practical strategies to eliminate drug-related errors. Moving on to the next talk, I would like to invite Dr. Sanish PG, Senior Consultant of Anesthesiology and Critical Care at Anantapuri Hospital.